So I'm gonna start sharing my screen, and I want you guys to give me a thumbs up when you see my screen. This is a rather new book. It's a 2020, perfect. It's a 2025 book. And I was watching Good Morning America. Well, I came across this book. So a lot of mindset books out there. It's called Ordinary Magic, by the way. A lot of mindset books out there, they're specifically talking to you. They tell you that if you as a person, change your mind, change your attitude, all of that, your life will change. And that is true. We don't have anything to dispute it. What really caught my eye about this book was that it not only puts the burden on you as a reader for you to change your life, but also as a for on you as a member of the society, on how your mindset about everything can change other people's lives. So it's your mindset, but the life of the society. So that's it. So it this book starts with an anatomy of a spiral. He calls it TIFF bit, and I'm gonna get to it. So imagine you check your phone and you see your friend hasn't texted you back for days. And you get a feeling, and you're like, oh, she doesn't like me anymore, or I don't think we're as close as I thought before, yada yada yada. You go through that feeling, and like before you know it, it kind of becomes like a rift between you guys. So because you saw that thing, you're gonna also kind of like a little bit recede from that friend. You're not gonna like when they respond, you're not gonna respond as fast, and when they actually respond, you're not gonna respond as warm, and then it's gonna be a behavioral shift because you're responding to that thing, and then it's just gonna go a down spiral, down, down, down until you guys are no longer friends. Apparently, this is something that we all do this, and it happens in all sorts of settings. For example, you receive a critical email in your work, and somebody gives you like a tough feedback. So you kind of feel like, hmm, this wasn't nice, this wasn't fair, and you just like, based off of that very little information, make this big uh make this big perception, this big interpretation that you don't belong. So I don't belong in this company. And because you feel like you don't belong, you start working less, you start not putting in your 110%. And because that thing happens, maybe, God forbid, you end up getting fired, and that just confirms your theory that you never belonged there. That's another downward spiral. That's just another recursive loop that brings you down. So that's how normally like my situations go in life for lots of people. You see something, you see tiny information, that's TIFF. You make big interpretation, that's bit. So that's a TIFF bit. We see tiny information and we make big interpretation. Oh, my boyfriend did not respond to my text quite easy or quite fast, so I think he's into someone else. That's a tiny information. You pair it on a big interpretation. That happens in all sorts of different stuff. It's just coming from a feeling of, am I being loved? Am I enough? Do I belong? Am I competent? And the book argues that you can change this downward spiral into an upward spiral because the magic is in the ordinary stuff. It's not about like you're gonna wake up one day and like have a different big change. It starts from like doing one thing, then one small thing differently, but just then doing it again and again and again. Hi, Miss June, welcome. So this intervention flip comes because we all have three main questions that we filter everything that happens to us through. So the first one is, do I belong? The feeling of belongness. Do I belong in cafe society, in peak state community? Do I belong in this community? Do I belong in this school? Do I belong in this organization? Do I belong? And if you don't feel that you don't belong, then you start behaving like you don't belong. And if you feel like you belong, you start behaving like you belong. And like imagine scenarios, you belong to your family or like a group of friends. And if somebody like, a friend of you has like a little bit of an argument with you, just like go back and that basically you talk to them head on and confront them. So you resolve that easily. But if you're new to that friend group, you don't do that because you don't know if you belong. So that feeling of belonging is our first filter. Everybody wants to know if they belong. You want to know, the person you're talking to wants to know. The other one is the question that we all ask ourselves. Can I do it? Am I able? Am I enough? That's the other filter that everything in life goes through. So when you receive like a critical email or a feedback from your boss or your mentor, if you feel like you're not competent, or if you're getting that vibe that you're not competent, you're gonna start kind of receding. You're not gonna put in your 110%. It could be on an unconscious level, but you don't bring in the value that they want you to bring in. You don't get to like, show them all that you have. So then it's another recursive loop. So you can change that narrative as if you're a mentor to someone. And but instead of like just writing an email, say, oh, so like this thing that you made for me, I didn't like it, should just try again. You can say, hi, yada yada yada, that we're working together, like Joe. I know that I have high standards, but I have also this confidence that you have every ability to achieve it, and then put in your feedback there. So this little tiny shifts makes all the difference when it comes to like having an upward spiral on instead of a downward spiral. Just you can tell people that I'm giving you these comments because I want you to succeed and I know that I have high standards. It's super important that you acknowledge this. So how this book is different from other books is that instead of putting all of it on you, the reader, to just like do it for yourself and do it and your life would change. It says that if you start doing it, the society would change. If you're mentoring somebody, if you're doing something for somebody, if you belong to a group or if somebody belongs to your group, it's like a two-way street. And later on, it actually kind of goes on a subject that is called psychology literacy that I'm going to get to later. So the third filter that everything in life kind of goes through is the filter of love, the filter of relationships. Do you love me? That's what mainly like on relationships. It can be in like couple relationships and romantic ones, but also applies to relationships that are working relationships. If you know that you're working in a group that you are loved, not only belong, but the person like across from you really really loves you, you are their favorite or you are respected, you kind of get stuff in a different light than if you don't get that feeling. That also again happens in romantic relationships. So this book has like a fun exercise. It asks couples that are going through stuff that to put in 7 minutes, and if like they're like having any argues or arguments with each other, write it from a third person and put some distance between themselves and the issue. And this thing kind of like allows them to see, oh, so it's not that I'm having this issue. For example, this random person is having this issue. And because it's in third person, I can kind of look at it. And this simple linguistic change allows our brain to see it from another perspective. He argues that it is so simple because it's a linguistic change. It's the shift right there. You can't say me, you can't see your name. It's just this other person, this third person, not present in the room, and that's what you get to see. So this psychological distance allows couples to actually grow closer to each other. And there have been so many studies. This is by no means like, guys, a substitute for actually reading the book. Definitely go read the book because I don't want to spoil it, but shows you that like the actual data that they've done it and everything. So three main filters: the filter of belonging, do I belong? The second one, can I do it? Am I competent? It works for people as an upward spiral who have a growth mindset. If you don't, then that's a downward spiral. And do you love me? So everything now we know that goes through these three filters, if we adjust it enough, just in a linguistic manner, we can turn a down spiral into an up spiral. So that's super, super easy on this. Also, we can argue this that well, we human beings, when we talk to each other, we have some sort of like, expectations from each other. Like I talk to you and I've asked like for a project for you from you before, like you've done a poster for me before. So I'm assuming or I'm expecting that you know what my taste is. So the next time I'm reaching out to you, because previous time I like gave you some instructions, I'm not gonna fully talk about my expectations. My expectations are there, but I'm not verbalizing them. Just me by telling you my expectation, by verbalizing them in a manner that again is positive, in the light that you can do it, can make all the difference. Because that if intervention then brings an upward spiral. So he actually gives us a framework for change. So he says it's not easy to go and say, hey, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that. Linguistic change, that's like one of the main ones that he argues. But he says if you want to talk to somebody, give them an identity shift, an identity change, which is something that Tony talks about a lot. So they've done studies that it actually, if you want to encourage somebody to vote, just telling them to vote is less effective than telling them be a voter because that's an identity. An identity is deeper, it's personal, and it's kind of like inside of you. So, whoever you want to talk to, whatever kind of relationship, whatever kind of client that you're talking to, if you want your client to take action, don't ask them to take action. Just tell them you're an action taker. That makes all the difference. If you have a client who you want to lose a lot of weight, don't tell them, oh, you should lose a lot of weight. You can say, oh, you're a go-getter. I know you're gonna lose this, like, last like bit of kgs that you have on you. So these two main things, basically giving identities and changing language, are the two tools, two frameworks for change that he offers. And he says it makes all the difference from a downward spiral into an upward spiral. And this is like where the magic is coming from. And then it gets to like, I think my favorite bit of the book, which is developing psychological literacy. So like today, it's so kind of mainstream. People ask you, "Oh, do you have AI literacy? Do you know how to work with AI?" And it has become a form of knowledge, a form of wisdom that everybody has to have. In the past, it was computer literacy. Everybody who didn't know how to work with computers were kind of an illiterate. English language is like one of those other things. If you don't know how to speak English, then you're cut off from like a big source of knowledge. And not all of that is available. Not all of the information you want is available to you. So he argues that psychological literacy is exactly like other kind of literacies that in society we have to pay attention to in the same way that we make sure that we can work with our phone and we're literate enough to do that, in the same way that we want to make sure that we're literate enough to read a book, we can work with our laptop and we can work with Chat GPT or other kind of AIs that we're working with. We also have to have this psychological literacy. That means that we just have to be aware of this very simple things of how our mind works and how other people's mind work in general. And just being aware of it would start making a difference. This difference will not happen overnight. This difference will not happen even over a decade, but it would start with you and then kind of trickle down in the society that you're living and through generations. It's going to change the life for the better because it's an upward spiral. Talking and using our words, because like I use that sentence a lot with my husband. I have a husband, he's an introvert and he's a software developer. I think I've given you all the information you need there. So he does not a guy who like, really goes deep into the feelings and stuff. And like, when he wants something, I just like, I tell him, honey, use your words, tell me what you want. And I just need to kind of like get him through the points of actually getting bits from him. But that's how it works. So That's psychological literacy for you. It's important that we are aware that other people would experience this. And if we're talking to somebody, if you're a manager, that's like, even a higher responsibility for you. When you're talking to somebody, are you hitting them on their belonging? Are you hitting them on their competency? Or are you hitting them on them being loved? If you're in a relationship, the same thing. Are you giving the person you're in a relationship the love? Are you questioning their competence? Are you questioning their belonging? It's important that if you do, you just change the wording, just change the language enough so that it becomes something positive instead of a negative. It's not gonna, like, one small thing would not make a downward spiral. One small thing would not make a down upward spiral, but it's the recursive loop. Because if you get into the habits, into the attitude of framing or using certain language, you will keep doing it over and over and over again. And that's how we get to systematic impact instead of just, like, temporary results. The book is filled, like filled with experiments, with data, with research, because Walton is a researcher, and he goes deep into like experiments on youth. So one of the examples that I really love, and one of the research that he's done, is in a high school. So kids that have been into juvie, into juvenile detention, after they come back from the juvenile detention to be integrated again into the school, he has two groups. One group that receive a letter that's basically outlines, like, from one of their teachers, that, hey, I'm like Mr. Sanchez or Mrs. Sanchez. I believe in you because, and they start listing stuff that are actually true about them. And I believe that you can achieve so and so and so and so. And another group doesn't really get that treatment. So the group that did it, they had actually 40% reduction in recidivism, which means that they were more present in school. They fell less into crime, into going back into those habits, just by giving a simple letter using simple words. And he has like lots of other experiments like this, like, asking that same kid to actually write a letter with three requests from their favorite teacher, and asking what kind of resources they would need. So that's another thing that they do. And all of this basically takes us to the next level. Another part which is like super close to my heart is thinking about global poverty, or basically giving. He mentions that through the studies, if you just like start handing out stuff to some people, it takes the agency away from them. But if you actually, when you give it to somebody, say, I'm giving this to you because, and they've done something for it, even that thing, like, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but if it's like in reciprocation for something else, that kind of gives them the agency, that motivates them. So that kind of, like, basically brings a whole new light into what happens to us as a society as a whole when we start talking to each other in a more, well, conscious manner. So this is a book I personally really loved, and this is like a very, 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 very short version of it that I wanted to share with you guys. And I love it. Again, I know I'm saying this again because that's why I love it. Because it doesn't put the whole burden on the reader that it's you, and if you change this, you start feeling like this, you start feeling like that. It's more on, hey, like, start doing this. You'd feel great, sure, but it has a bigger effect on the society, which I believe is actually the way that the world works. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.